Let's spend a few minutes talking about developing conflict management skills. We'll start by considering a few questions around conflict. Conflicts will usually take care of themselves if you give them enough time. Yes, no, maybe. Well, I'd say the answer to that is probably no. Most conflicts will not usually take care of themselves, no matter how much time you give them. It's best to address conflicts as they occur within your team. If you don't, they tend to just lie under the surface, accumulate, fester, and get worse. And they will impact the team's performance at some point. Confronting someone is almost always unpleasant. Well, some people say yes, it is unpleasant. Others say no, it doesn't have to be. The truth is probably both. But to say it's almost always unpleasant might be a stretch. Confronting someone in a potentially conflictual situation does not have to be unpleasant. Uh, it depends on how you view conflict, which is something that we're going to talk more about in a few minutes. An effective team leader will prevent conflict from occurring within the team. Probably not. Conflict is going to occur within a team. The issue is not the conflict. The issue is how does the team manage the conflict? Conflict itself is an inevitable byproduct of human interaction. We're simply going to conflict with people or conflict with people. Um, you can't avoid it, but you can manage it, and that's what an effective team leader will do. If there's conflict in the team, you're probably dealing with team members who aren't that committed to the team. I'd say no. If there's conflict in the team, it may very well be because team members are committed to the team. They care about the team. They want the team to be successful. They simply have differences in opinions or perspectives or goals regarding the team. So again, conflict within a team is not necessarily a bad thing. It's how you deal with it. People get angry or frustrated, and that's always harmful to working relationships within a team. It doesn't have to be. Anger and frustration are just as valid human emotions as are joy and happiness. We wouldn't argue that joy and happiness are harmful to working relationships within a team. So we shouldn't argue that anger and frustration are harmful also. You should expect people to experience these kinds of emotions. Again, the question is, how do you handle those emotions when they do occur? So I think we can conclude that you cannot prevent conflict from occurring in the team. You should deal with conflicts as they occur. Conflict can be positive, and it means people care. Given that, however, we often still dread conflict, and there are a number of reasons for that. Most people are simply uncomfortable in conflictual situations. Someone's going to get their feelings hurt. They have to engage in an argument. They might lose. They don't like to argue. Others won't like us if we disagree with them. There are a lot of reasons why people dread conflict. But we need to understand that conflict can be positive. It opens up issues for discussions. It promotes creativity and innovation and new ideas. It actually fosters understanding and builds cohesiveness. The research clearly shows that high-performing teams experience greater levels of conflict within the team than do lower-performing teams. So again, it's not the conflict that occurs, it's how well the team manages that conflict. I think it's very important to reflect a little bit on your personal view of conflict. It's going to be very difficult to use conflict effectively or to successfully manage conflict if you have a negative view of conflict, if you dread conflict, if you fear it. We often view conflict as a disruption to a relationship. It's a fight against someone who is working against you. We often define relationships in terms of that conflict. Oh, I just can't work with that person. And we see it as a battle between right and wrong. Now, if you view conflict this way, again, it's going to be very difficult to successfully manage conflict. I'd like you to consider an alternative view of conflict. Conflict is simply going to happen because of the diversity in a team. If you'll remember, we talked about one of the biggest obstacles to team development is people, because people are so diverse. Well, you're going to have conflicts because of that diversity, but you need to look at that diversity as potential. That diversity represents the potential for greater learning, for greater creativity, for better problem solving. Use the diversity that's in the team and deal with the conflict that comes from it in a positive manner. Look for common interests. Look for common goals. Don't look for differences and don't focus on those differences. Remember that conflict is part of a healthy relationship. It's not a battle between right and wrong. It's simply a question of differences in opinions or preferences, perspective, goals. Recognize those differences for what they are. They're simply differences, and use them in a positive way. The research clearly shows, excuse me, there are different ways that people communicate with one another. You can be a passive communicator. A passive communicator doesn't do a very good job of sharing their thoughts and feelings. The other person has a difficult time understanding what the individual wants or needs because they won't say. The aggressive communicator is just the opposite. The aggressive communicator almost hits you over the head with their thoughts, their needs, their feelings, and they do very little to consider your thoughts or your needs. What you want to strive for is assertive communication. Assertive communication is the appropriate expression of your thoughts and feelings to the other person, and you encourage the other person to share their thoughts and feelings, and you respect the differences that you might find. Assertive communication can be a very powerful tool in successfully managing conflict. I'd like you to consider the assertiveness statement as a tool to help manage potential conflicts. Often what gets in the way of successfully working your way through a conflict are the emotions that come with conflict and misunderstanding. The assertiveness statement can be used to help reduce the emotion and decrease the potential for misunderstanding and defensiveness in a conflictual situation. There are three parts of an assertiveness statement. When, I feel, I'd like. The first part, the when part, is simply an objective description of the behavior or the situation without any emotion. It allows you to stay focused on the problem and not the person, not the emotion that you're experiencing. So, as an example, a when statement might be, when you flip the TV channels while we're watching a show I'm interested in. So the situation here is two people sitting on the couch in the den watching TV. One person has the remote, and they tend to flip channels, and that is annoying to the other individual. The I feel part of the statement comes next. Here you describe what your feelings are when that particular behavior occurs. I feel irritated and annoyed, like my preferences don't count. And the final part of the statement is the I'd like part. And it's what you want to happen to help resolve the situation. It can be a specific request or simply an invitation to have more discussion so you can reach an agreement. In our example, the I'd like part of the statement might be, it would mean a lot to me if you would just ask if it's okay to switch channels rather than just doing it. So if you put all of the parts of the statement together, you get an assertiveness statement. When you flip the TV channels while we're watching a show I'm interested in, I feel irritated and annoyed, like my preferences don't count. And it would mean a lot to me if you would just ask if it's okay to switch channels rather than just doing it. Now, granted, this is kind of an artificial situation. You might not go to the trouble to develop an assertiveness statement. They're generally most effective in situations which are highly emotional. Again, they're designed to reduce the emotion, to focus on the problem so that you do not attack people. When people feel attacked, they're going to get defensive. If they get defensive, they're either going to withdraw and they'll no longer work with you, or they'll attack you back, and then the exchange simply deteriorates into one person attacking and the other person attacking back. You don't really move forward in an exchange like that. When you use an assertiveness statement, you don't blame the other person, you don't use explosive language, you don't attack someone's personality, you don't evaluate or judge. You're trying to communicate to the person that there is a behavior, a behavior or a situation that you're having trouble with. You want to be as objective as you can in describing this situation or describing the behavior. You're not saying they're a bad person. You're not attacking them. You're simply saying, when this behavior occurs, this is how I feel about it. This is my reaction to it. And for the sake of our relationship, I'd like your help in changing this behavior or changing this situation. It can be very effective, and I hope that you'll try it in